we see these maps all the time. You take 10 different places, they take water testing around the river, around in Fort Lauderdale, and boy, the last one out of the 10, 8 were red and 2 were only green, and red is not good.
Right.
And so I want you to explain what actually is that, and also the city is having a great mangrove restoration project starting at George English Park and we tried to remember the name, Cootahachie Park in Riverside, but both of those places are always reading red. So how is that going to affect what is planted and what we can do if that is always coming up, with too much bacteria in the water?
Thank you. Okay, so maybe start first with what is that red readings. So, and I can speak to our water quality monitoring in Broward County. It's been almost 4 years now, actually. So we have been doing it for quite a while. The reason that we do our water quality monitoring is to provide this information to all of you so you can access it and make informed decisions or where you want to go to recreate. So when we swim in waters that can be polluted, there can be many different microorganisms that cause disease, pathogens that can make us sick. But we can't measure all of them. It would be logistically very difficult. Sometimes it's dangerous to work with many of these microbes. So instead, we use something that is called fecal indicator bacteria. We use this fecal indicator bacteria specifically enterococci is the one that we measure for Fort Lauderdale and the one that you will see in those readings. The reason we use it is because this bacteria is typically present in the gastrointestinal tract of many, many animals. Okay, so when we see this bacteria in the waters, it is an indicative. It means that it could be some fecal recent pollution that is going on in the water. It could be. Now, this is, again, is an indicator. Now, we have to understand that this bacteria also has limitations. That means that we cannot tell where the source of that bacteria is coming. Okay, so that means that it could come from different animals like humans or dogs or birds, or it can even persist in the environment under the right conditions. Why do we care about that? We care about that because humans share the same microorganisms that are specific to infect us, like viruses, for example. So feces from human is more dangerous than from other animals. Okay, so now that we understand what we're measuring, and the red comes from a standard or a threshold, a number, we count this bacteria, we culture them, we count them, and we determine if it's above a specific level. That level comes from a lot of studies, epidemiology studies that have determined scientifically that there is an increased risk of getting sick, of illness, when you swim with waters that have those certain levels of bacteria, right? So we know that. So we go out to the field, we take a water sample. What is a water sample? Our water sample typically is less than this volume. This is 500 mils. We measure 100 mils. So the waterways and the ocean is very big. So think about it. This is a snapshot. It's a quick photograph of that instant. So it changes with environment, with the rain, with the tides, exactly. So we have to understand what this data really means. Okay, now to your question, this week, for example, there were, 8 sites that failed and 2 that passed. If you look at that map, it is very revealing. You will notice that all of the sites that failed are inland. What does that mean? That's where we have most of our land sources of pollution. That's where we have all the impervious surfaces, right? This is a city that we've been building. When we build, then when it rains, the rainfall doesn't drain naturally. It doesn't go through the pores and gets naturally filtered. It's just running the runoff, and then eventually it's going to end up in our waterways, right? So if you look at this week, and if you remember the weather, there was a very big rainfall event on Monday and Tuesday. So although we cannot tell with enterococci whether that is from which animal or if it's of fecal origin for sure, we cannot tell that information. I would suggest that perhaps the rainfall and the storms that happened heavily had something to do with those high elevated levels. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I know, I think, what city is it? A small city up the coast, on their drains, you know, where all these drains, they have something painted there and it says, the ocean starts here. And I think that's a very cool thing, because it is, whatever you goes in that drain is gonna end up into the ocean and into our waterways.